All right. Welcome, everyone, to Pen to Paper. It's been a while since I've had an author on. It's been a while since I've been even active on this channel, but I'm so glad that Sandrine here is with us today. So before we jump in any further, I just want to make sure that I'm getting this Instagram going, because this is the first time that I'm doing an Instagram live, like connected to YouTube. It doesn't seem like it worked. So, oh, wait. Oh, I think I messed it up. Hold on a second.
That
Let
happens.
me double check on my Instagram here, and then we'll see. We got to check. Okay. It says we're live, so hopefully that means it's working there.
Hopefully.
Okay. Whoever's on Instagram and it's not working, just, well, I guess they wouldn't even see. Anyways,
Let us know
so I
afterwards,
have something here. Yes, yeah, that's right. Sandrine Lavoie-Filion, she's the author of Uncensored First Time Mom Confessions. This is really neat. I've done a lot of fiction authors, so it's always fun to dive into like a fictional world. But these are your like deepest, darkest thoughts on pregnancy and motherhood, and probably a lot of people are dying to know what you've experienced, and I'm sure you have a lot to share. So why don't you share a little bit about yourself and just tell us the whole start of this journey, like what inspired you to even have the courage, first of all, to be in touch with your thoughts and your feelings and emotions and let that all in, and then to write about it so people can read it.
Yeah, definitely. So, like you said, my name is Sandrine. I was originally a wellness coach. I still am, but I used to coach a lot of pregnant women, postpartum women, closer to menopause, and also I knew a lot about pregnancy, about what you're going through, about the changes from your body. But there's a big difference from what I knew theoretically to what the experience is actually. So there
Mm.
was a lot of difference there. And there was a lot of things that you hear about pregnancy, about motherhood, about how it was going to be beautiful, magical, all of these things. And I heard a lot of things about it. And then when I got there, when I actually got pregnant, the experience I was having wasn't the same. And then so many things that I went through just weren't like people were telling me they were supposed to be like. So I
Mm.
got thinking like, what's wrong with me? And it's funny that you're asking, like what got me to introspect and to start writing, because I think a big part of my life, I didn't do that. I just
Mm.
went through the motion. And throughout a big part of my pregnancy, I think I just did that as well. I just
Okay.
went through the motion, was, I'm not going to say completely disconnected. I was still present, but part of me was disconnected to the experience. And it's really more so when I was postpartum that I was overwhelmed, I was exhausted and everything, and hormones started rushing through my body and all. And then I had a meltdown. I was just having
Mm.
breakdowns after breakdowns, and I just couldn't take it. And journaling, writing, that was the thing that people were always saying, like, oh, you need to journal, you need to start writing and all. And I was always brushing it off. I don't have time for that. Like, who has time to write? Who has time for that? So I was just like, nah, I'm good. And then when I was postpartum, I was having breakdowns and all, and I didn't even know why. Sometimes I would be crying and I was like, I'm fine. Like, why am I crying? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to start writing. And I just started writing about everything I was feeling. And then I went back to my pregnancy, everything that happened and all, and I just wrote it down. And I usually say, like, it's the book that wasn't meant to be a book, because
Okay.
I was writing for myself. Like, my
Mm.
first thought wasn't like, I'm going to publish this. No, it was just like, no one's is ever going to read this. I can write whatever I want. That was my way of thinking. So I did that. I wrote all of my internal thought. I tried to process all of this. I tried to think, like, why did I feel so overwhelmed? Why was I scared? Why was I angry? All that rage I was feeling, all of those emotions. Why was I feeling
Mm.
this? And then I went through, everything that people told me it was going to be like, and what was my actual experience. And I got to go through so many taboos, so many things that people don't talk about. And I just wrote the whole thing, I wrote it. But I'm also a little bit of a perfectionist. So, I had to edit it and make it beautiful, even though I was the only one,
Of course.
reading it. It has to be pretty. And then one of my friends got pregnant. And, she was struggling in some ways and all. And like, she's one of my closest friends. And I was like, you know what? That would be a good thing I could do to
Mm,
just be like, okay, maybe my experience was a little bit different. And if you are going through anything that's different, than what you've heard, it's okay. Maybe like you're not what's wrong, like maybe like we're both, like maybe we're both okay with those things. So I made her read it. And then at the same time, I was like, okay, I was also on this journey to open myself up, be more vulnerable, and then be able to be open with other people. So I was like, I'm going to give it to a couple of my friends, who I trust, and they're going to be okay with it. First time one of my friends read it, I had to go on the couch, take deep breath. I was not okay. But, so that was my feeling at the time. But
yeah.
then one of my friends came back, and then she had a marketing background, and she looked at me and she was like, oh, so how do we market this? And I was like, no, we don't market this. This is not a marketing thing. Like, we don't do that. But it got me thinking, because I was on this journey to open myself up, to be more vulnerable. What would be the next step? The next step would be showing it to everyone, publishing it. And it also got me thinking, because since I had written this book, I was having more conversation with other moms. And I started to realize that I wasn't the only one having those feelings. I
Mm,
wasn't the only one who had tons of meltdowns, who was overwhelmed, scared, angry, guilty, ashamed. I wasn't the only one. It's just no one told me about it. So I was
yeah.
like, if there was a book out there telling you all of the taboo, the dirty thing, the things that people don't tell you about, and you could have that before your pregnancy or as you're pregnant, it would normalize so many things. It would make women feel connected, supported. You wouldn't feel alone. You wouldn't feel like something is wrong with you. So
Mm.
I did decide to publish a book with, all of my personal, vulnerable emotion and writing. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to put that out there. So that was my whole process into writing this book.
That's incredible. Would you say that, because you said the only time you actually started sharing it with other people is when your closest friends were going through it themselves, right? Would
Mhm.
you say that service to them was a huge factor in actually being brave enough to open that side of yourself and be vulnerable?
Yeah, like their reaction to it definitely helped me, especially that friend who was like, well, it normalized a lot of things. If they had had a bad reaction to it, I probably would have kept it to myself, and burned it and then never shared it. But yeah, having those conversations, I really realized like how supported I was by my friends, which I wouldn't have had that support if I hadn't opened up. But
Mm,
also having those conversations and realizing that so many women were going through the same thing, I realized, okay, this is going to be a scary thing. This is going to be very scary. We're going to put it out there, but it's going to be worth it, because
yeah.
at least someone will be able to read it and relate to it. Maybe not everyone will relate to it. I'm perfectly confident, and I know there are tons of magical, beautiful pregnancies out there. Everything is fine, everything is perfect, and I'm happy for them. But I also know this is not the reality for everyone. So I
Mhm.
think my book needs to be there for those people, to
Yeah.
be at least helpful, to say like, okay, you're not alone, like that's okay, that's fine. And just to normalize all those other emotions, because there are beautiful and magical things in pregnancy and motherhood. But there's also other things that I think we need to have a discussion about.
So you're opening the door with that, with your book.
Yeah,
Where would
that's
you
cool.
say you predominantly heard kind of all the good, beautiful, magical things? Like, was this from a personal community you had, people you knew that had gone through pregnancy and motherhood, from media? Like, where were you hearing all those good parts, but not the bad parts?
I think a lot of it comes from also social media.
Mm,
We all know internally that social media, promotes just the good stuff, what's beautiful and everything. And we all know it's not necessarily all true. But then you always see it on social media, the beautiful, pregnancy picture, pregnancy post, everything is perfect. This was beautiful. This was magical. But there's also a lot of saying that, get passed from generation to generation, or, a couple of saying, just saying like, okay, what's the most beautiful day of your life? This
Mhm.
was when my baby came out. And I was like, well,
Mhm.
you know what? I had been in labor for 3 days. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, in pain. Like, no, this was not the most beautiful day in my
Oh.
life. So, there's all those general knowledge that I feel are passed down to generation, or that, like you get told by your aunt, by your parents, by all of those people, that it just wasn't my experience when I got there to see
Mhm.
that. I had also, like seen other type of pregnancy and motherhood, but they were usually like the tragic posts, like
Mm.
a woman almost died, in labor, or like something terrific, something tragic happened. And throughout my pregnancy, even though I felt disconnected, even though I had meltdowns and all of that, nothing really tragic happened, like I didn't almost die. My baby like was healthy and all of that. So there was also part of me that felt ashamed of feeling what I was feeling, because
Mm.
I should be grateful right now. Like, why am I feeling like this way? Like, there are so many other women who have a tougher pregnancy, who
Yeah.
also almost didn't make it, who were unable to have a child and all of that. So there was also this kind of like voice in my head that was also playing it, like, what are you complaining about? That
Mm.
was just putting layers onto all of the burden, all of the shame, all of the guilt I was feeling.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into that a little bit more. How did you or, one or two things maybe that you
Mhm.
did, or the process, or maybe, light bulb moment where you realized, I don't need to be ashamed of this. I don't need to be guilty. This is just what I'm going through. How did you get over that?
I think it was really the more conversation I've had. Like when I was writing it, I was just writing it for myself.
Mhm.
So no one was going to judge me on it. It was just me. So it was just like, well, this is how you feel. This is it. And then, yes, there's a little bit of internal like judgment, internal shame on it, but no one's going to see it. So that's fine. But then I started showing it to people. And instead of having people judge me or
Mhm.
mock me, which I was expecting, like the reaction I was expecting were people mocking me, people judging me, people being mean to me. And instead of that, I got wonderful moms, wonderful women who were just like, yeah, that sucks. It's like, yeah, I felt the same way. And like, honestly, yes. And they were just relating to what I wrote so much that was like, okay, wow, this is maybe not a me problem. Maybe it is a little bit, but it's not all on me.
Yeah.
So that really helped. I think it's the community support. And there's a saying like you need a village and all that. And I think I didn't have that village, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And like things I've always been, let's say, rougher on my family's side and all. So I didn't get that support. But now with my book, there's another like really good thing about this is I get to have a community now of
Yeah.
moms who read my book, who are supportive and who are like, yeah, this is exactly what it feels like. And maybe not everyone relates to everything that's in the book. And that's okay. I'm always saying, like, this is my experience. Your experience might be completely different. But
Mm.
that's the beautiful thing. It's like our experience are different, but we can relate on so many things. And the goal is to normalize it all. So I didn't go through all of the experience of pregnancy, all of the experience of motherhood. But I think whatever you have gone through, I think we need to acknowledge. And I think we need a space to at least have those feelings. Even though you think you're not supposed to have them, you have them. So let's just acknowledge them and
Yeah.
then make sure that you have a safe space to express them.
That's right. And then you sift through them, and then you decide, okay, what am I going to do with these feelings? How am I going to act on these or not act on these, right?
Yeah.
So, how do you think people could get over, because you said, on social media it's all about like, oh, these beautiful moments, and we don't really talk about the nitty-gritty stuff. How do you think people could, well, I mean, I guess it's more of a personal journey for everyone, but how can we encourage or foster the willingness for people to be vulnerable and open, and not to share to get for sympathy's sake, like, oh, I need, a sympathy
Mhm.
points because like I'm so depleted in my self confidence or whatever, but just being willing to share. Like how do you think we could encourage that in that space?
Yeah, I think we have progressed a lot if we're looking at, let's say, like 10 years ago or like 5 years ago,
Mhm.
because there are more and more women, more and more mothers who will open up about those things. I think
Yes.
we hear a lot nowadays about like the tragic pregnancy, when someone almost died, when, like when something really bad, something really big happened. I don't think we normalize that much, just the bittersweetness of it, all the
Mhm.
real emotion, even though like nothing really bad happened. I think it's just going to take more conversation and more space to open it. Like, I think we all know, we shouldn't believe everything that's on social media, but the more people we will have that will share their story, that will talk about it, well, the more conversation we're going to have about it, and then more people will see it and will understand, okay, yeah, this is okay too. Like there's a big range of emotion that we can have. So just having those space, opening up those conversation. But I think the hardest thing about social media and about all of this is, like you said, like we don't want people that just come here because I want pity and all.
Mhm.
No, but you do know that putting yourself out there on social media, you
Yeah.
are at risk of being mocked, being judged, and not everyone is ready to do that, because that is the thing. And I wrote a couple of comments like in my book of comments that just people like made about me when I was pregnant,
Mm.
and then sometime, on social media, you're anonymous, you're never going to meet the person. So you feel free to say whatever you think, whatever you want. And it's not always nice. It's not always kind, but people can do that. So I think personally, we also need to work on just self confidence and be, I don't even know this person. This shouldn't matter. My confidence, it's what I think about myself. But this is more of a personal journey, I think, and one that's really hard to do and navigate for a lot of people. But
Yeah.
the more people we will have that will go out there and just risk being hurt, and being mocked and judged, I think that's going to help a lot.
So true. You mentioned that you cover a lot of like taboos and secrets, like the secret side of pregnancy. So we're not going to display them all right now because we want people to buy the book, right? And to kind of
Yeah.
get the firsthand experience. But what is one taboo that you feel is very prevalent still, and that you kind of, you played on in the book?
Well, one I could talk about would be like, at the very beginning of like, when you get your baby.
Mm.
One of the thing I was saying earlier is it's supposed to be a beautiful, magical moment. You're supposed to get your baby, and then, like you're the mom. So you should have a big wave of unconditional love right away for this tiny human. I'm gonna protect you. I love you and all. And wasn't the case for me. I
Mm.
had been in labor for 3 days. I was exhausted, overwhelmed. I was disconnected. I was aware I had just had a baby. I just wanted to sleep, you know?
Yeah.
There was a big rush of like adrenaline going through my body. I was shaking. I was freezing. I had blankets over me now. And then I was so sleepy. I just wanted to sleep.
Oh.
And I was like, do whatever you want, with this baby. Like we need skin to skin. I asked my husband to do it instead, but I was just like, I just need to sleep. And then the next day, I was like, okay, we have a baby, but like it didn't feel like it was my baby. It's a weird
Mm.
feeling. It's outside of my body now. So
Yeah.
it took a while for me to get attached, to my baby. And that's the thing where we always want to say, but I love my baby, like you need to say it. But
Yeah.
it takes time. And I think there's a lot of shames that comes from mothers not feeling that instant love right away. Like if you ask me now if I love my baby, I'm going to tell you yes, of course. But it took time. And I think that's something unrealistic that we're asking mothers, to
Mm.
have unconditional love right away. Like in every relationship that you have in your life, you're building a connection with someone. So why would that be different,
That's
So
a really good point.
so you start caring for your baby, you have the contact naps, he smiles a little bit, he looks at you, he giggles, he's cute, he's saying mama, that there's so many instances that now you're like, oh, okay, he's cute, I like him. Oh, and then love starts to build. But I think it's unrealistic to say like he's out of my body now. oh my God, that's my baby, unconditional love. And I know some women will have that experience. And
Mhm.
I'm glad for them. I'm happy for them. I just don't think it's realistic to think every mother will have that experience.
Mm. No, so true. With my own experience, I was actually scared if I would even want to hold my baby
Mm.
because a part like so a lot of my friends, if we were in social situations, they're like always going to the baby. They wanted to hold the baby. I was just like, "Oh, it's great. Like you can hold the baby."
Okay.
And so I was wondering, like, am I actually going to want to hold my baby? So I was a little concerned about that. Now, when my baby came out, that wasn't an issue. But I do remember with probably most of them, like it took me a while for it to really connect in my own head during pregnancy that like, oh, okay, now I feel connected to this baby. Like it probably took me until, between second, third trimester to be like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, no, like now I'm really feeling pregnant. Whereas obviously before I knew there was a baby inside me. So
Yeah. But your life
everyone's
was the
different.
same before, so
Yeah, yeah. Everyone's different. And yeah, it totally makes sense that everyone would, build that connection at different paces. So,
yeah.
oh, I do
And
have a question here.
yeah,
So we have, how can your spouse help you through a difficult pregnancy? A
yeah.
great question.
It is a really great question. And I was just about to talk about my spouse there because
Awesome.
we're talking about like, like being disconnected and not feeling like you have that unconditional love right away. Something that's also in my book is I wrote a little bit about my husband's perspective because
Mm,
you also say, like, it's also his child. He should also get that unconditional love. But then, as you did and I did, like, when the baby grows inside your body, eventually he starts to move, you starts to build that connection. He
yeah.
didn't get that. So
Mm,
when baby got out, it was the same for him. It was like, okay, I know he's my baby, but I have no connection. And
yeah.
that's something that he talked to with some of his friends afterward because they were all saying, like, it's going to be perfect. You're going to love him and all of that. And then he came back and he was like, what's happening? And they all admitted, yeah, it took a while, for us. And he was like, why didn't you guys tell me about that?
Oh,
I thought I was wrong. So there's definitely something with like the spouse that it's also a problem of connection. Not necessarily a problem, but there's also a connection that you need to build.
for
And
sure.
for what your spouse can do, for a difficult pregnancy, it's going to be a little bit different for every woman, every mother, I feel like, because everyone has different needs, I would say. Something that my husband, I really appreciated about my husband, especially throughout labor, he was very involved. So, those pressure points, all of those things that you're supposed to say to alleviate pains, he was really, every 8 minutes, every 5 minutes, he was like, I'm there, I'm going to do it, like,
Wow.
and he wanted to push, he wanted to do that. I think something that we often forget for the pregnant woman, for the new mother, is we take care of the baby, we take care of the chore, we take care of every task that needs to be handled. That's a really good thing you can do. But do we take care of the mother? Do we take care of her emotional needs? Do we take care of just take time for you? What do you need? How do you feel? Can we talk about it? Do we have that safe space? Because yes, it's great to
Mhm.
do the dishes, yes, it's great to get the baby room ready, but do you get to have those conversations as well? Do you have that safe space to express whatever you are feeling? Because in my case, sometimes I felt like I was going to implode. So yes, you can do the dishes and all of that, but everything's happening in my head. Everything is here right now, so I need to talk, I need to have that space. So I think there's a lot of great things that you can do. But yeah, having a safe space and just talking it through, but having those real conversation and just being there to support her as well when you're having difficult family dynamics. Okay. When you're having difficult conversation and all, just to be able to jump in and to be supportive and to be there. I think that would be a great plus for your spouse to do.
Excellent. Well, thanks for answering that question. That was great.
Thank you for
Yeah,
the question.
for sure. So we talked about one taboo that you found. What is one? You also mentioned beautiful moments in your book that you did have those. What
Mhm.
is one beautiful moment that really stood out to you?
I did put a couple of beautiful moments at the end of my book because even though it's about bittersweetness and taboo, I didn't want my whole pregnancy or all to just look negative. I
Mm.
think the beautiful moments, and that's probably going to be sounding funny for women that are not mothers, but mothers will probably understand. But
Okay.
beautiful moments aren't big moments for me. Like,
Mm.
I'm not going to tell you about that big event that we went through that was beautiful and magical. My beautiful, magical moments are very small, you know? It's the first contact nap at the hospital, that I got to have
Mm.
my baby for 2 hours. It's the first giggle, or it's the first mama, that I got. Like that day that I was exhausted, I hadn't slept and all, and then my baby just laughed and said, Mama. Like, those are
Aw.
just the little beautiful moments. And like, it's not a big thing. It's not a big moment, like that time that you're gonna sing a little lullaby and that your baby is just gonna have those big eyes looking at you and just connecting. Like, it's those little emotion that you're feeling.
Oh, I love that. No, it's true. I found the contact naps were definitely some of my favorites. Just
Yeah.
having your baby fall asleep on you and giving yourself the grace and the patience to just sit there with your baby and let them sleep on you. And you get a rest too. So,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. What your book is kind of geared toward first time moms. What is one of the biggest takeaway messages that you want them to get out of reading your book?
The biggest takeaway message I want is just, every pregnancy is going to be different. Even though your pregnancy is different than what you might have heard, that's okay.
Yeah.
All of the feeling that you're having, I want them to be normalized. Okay. I want you to feel like, yes, you can go through the whole range of emotion. It's okay. It's normal. We've all been through it. Okay. And it's normal. It's human. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's okay. So I think it's really normalizing all of the experience. Even though someone would read my book and be like, that wasn't my experience, or I've went through something different, I just want it to be okay. Like, the goal of the book is just to show one story. Everyone has a different story, and I
Yeah.
just want to normalize it all.
Yeah. Excellent. Has writing this book and marketing and publishing this book changed your perspective on motherhood a little bit? Has it solidified it? What has it done kind of in conjunction with your motherhood?
It has changed a lot in a lot of ways. Like, it has changed the way I communicate with people, in
Mm.
like the way I approach my discussion with pregnant women or mothers. Because in some of the thing in the book, some of the thing that triggered me, I was like, wait, did I do that before?
Mm.
Did I used to have that comment? Did I used to say these things? Did I used to be overwhelming in that way? So it got me thinking. I was trying to go back into how I was acting with my friends and all, and be like, oh, wait, what did I do? Okay. And
Mhm.
so I'm trying to act differently now, toward, pregnant women, uh, or new mothers, because I know what I would have liked people to do for me, or I know what I dislike. So I'm trying to be very conscious of my approach and what I say and what I do. So that
Yeah.
has definitely changed. But my whole conversation with mothers now, and women and people in general, honestly, since I wrote this book, just the way I approach conversation is really different, because now I know I'm trying to create that space. And if I see that someone is there and can actually hold that space with me to be vulnerable and to be open, I'm just going to have those conversations. Whereas
Mhm.
before, I wouldn't have been vulnerable. I wouldn't have necessarily opened up. Now, if I'm asking you how you're doing, I really want to know how you're doing. I'm really there to ask you. And I'm not just there for the baby. I'm not just there because, I'm really asking more personal question. And really, I'm just there, to have the space, and whatever the person is feeling, I'm like, I'm here to listen. That's just it.
Mhm.
What do you want me to do? You don't know what you want to do? Fine. I'll do something that I think will be helpful to you. Because sometimes, you're so overwhelmed, you don't know what you need. But yeah, so I think my way of approaching conversation has changed a lot, but I'm just more cautious about what I do now.
Mm. No, that's very, very wise on your part for sure. We have another question. Do you recommend that all pregnant women journal their pregnancy? Why or why not?
I would say yes. Honestly, why not? Yeah. Because, well, journaling through your pregnancy or writing it, you don't have to publish it, like, you don't have to go this far. So you can just journal, because when your thoughts are all in your head, you're overthinking and all, it's all in the air. When you're writing it down on paper, it's there. You can work with it. I feel it's so much easier to work to overthinking all of the emotional when it's down on paper. Because
Mhm.
then you write about it and you're like, oh, wait, what was that? Okay. And then you rewrite it and then you rewrite it. So it's easier to understand yourself. It's also a great way to process emotion. I'm not gonna lie. I had so many breakdowns writing it, because,
Oh,
like, it's easy to understand an emotion. And you're just like, oh, I'm sad because this and this and this. And it was easy for me to just say, I'm putting links. I understand my emotion. But there's a difference between understanding your emotion and feeling your emotion and processing them. So I think writing really helps with feeling them, processing them. And even though, like, you don't want to publish it, that's fine. Just writing it, I think it's a great way to do that. And at the end of the day, it's just going to be a good memory, in 10
yes.
years, 15 years, 20 years. And that was a thing for me when I was still on the fence of like, am I going to publish it or not? I still have, that, like, well, now it's 309 pages, of like book. But in my thinking, I was like, even though I don't publish it, I could still keep that. And in 20 years, I could give it to my son. I
Yeah.
could give it to, like, just like his girlfriend, or like, and if she was to have a baby or anything, I could just be like, hey, you know what? You don't have to read it, but this was my experience. If you want to know what I've gone through, or just like send it to your friends. So, or keep it to yourself. You don't have to share it at all. But yeah, I think I would say yes. Why not? Why not journal through your pregnancy? It can only do good.
Exactly. No, it's well, there's a reason why, they say that journaling in general is just a good way to, as you said, flesh out your thoughts and figure out exactly what you're thinking and how to move from there. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what would you say is, other than your book, which is a great resource on the power of personal testimony, what are some other great resources that first time moms can go to, or systems, or, communities, where they wouldn't feel alone, or where they could access real stories and real people sharing the sides of pregnancy and motherhood?
Well, definitely, like, if they have a good village, if they have a good support, if they have people they trust, close friend, I think that's really the best space to start with. Those are people that you trust, those are people you feel close to, people that you're going to be received well. Those are, well, they were the first people I contacted. So I would
Yeah.
say go for them first, see what they tell you. If they have gone through a pregnancy, if they are mothers themselves, maybe they have struggles through some part of it, and maybe they have found some resources already that would be available in your area. So that would be a good way to start there. Depending on where you live, I'm sure there are like community resources there, but I would still say, even though there are plenty of things on social media that we should not believe in, I do still think social media is a great platform, though, because yes, there will be those like Instagram posts that are like retouched 25 times, that are not real anymore. But even though you have those, you're still going to be able to find real people. You're still going to
Mhm.
be able to find people that will just share their story. And I think that's a thing that we are starting to do more and more on social media, is just sharing our story and then looking at, what is a real post. There was a trend a couple months ago, or, like a while ago, about like, this is the Instagram pic, this is the real pic, showing you like, no, it's not always real. So I think more and more people are talking about it on social media. And I think social media is a great way to break isolation, because
Yeah.
sometimes maybe you're in a smaller community. Maybe you're not close with your family. Maybe you don't have that village. Maybe you have really no one to turn to. And you're like, well, what do I do now? And you feel isolated. Well, sometimes social media might be the only way for you to get your answer, to get connection. And people always find it funny when I say that. But one of the questions I used to have is, like, where did you find the best answers? Where did you find the best information about what to do with your baby, about all of those technical things? Like, where did you go? And my answer is TikTok.
Okay.
Honestly, The best tips I got for my baby, for colics, for like anything was on TikTok. I found a big community there of just moms that were posting videos of saying, like, hey, this works for my baby. Look at this. This has worked. You need to be careful. They're not necessarily like health professional and all. So don't necessarily just take the advice and say, I should give this food to my baby. I should give, not necessarily. But there was a lot of tips for like sleep routine, and then just
Mm,
like changing like the diapers and all of that. So I found a lot of things, a lot of resource on TikTok, and everyone was just so non-judgmental. So
okay.
that was actually my best place to get tips on. Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of different resources, but I'm sure yours is a great, your book is a great one. So people should get it.
They should, but my
Uncensored.
book, yeah, but my book, however, like I want to make it clear, like this is not a how to change a diaper book.
No.
Like this is not a maternity book. Like you're gonna learn how to parent, because there are 100 ways to be a good
Yes.
mother and to parent. This is more so like a real raw experience that you can
Yeah.
get to.
Yeah, exactly. So what's next for you? Are you going to do like uncensored first time mom to a toddler? Well, how old is your son now? Is he
He's 2 now. Well, two and a
okay?
half. Yeah.
Okay, so he's getting to the toddler age. So is that like potentially something you'd want to write about? Or are you wanting to completely branch out into a different genre? Maybe you don't know yet. That's okay too.
I already know what the next step is. I'm
Okay.
releasing a second book December 1st.
Oh,
It
wow.
will be a totally different subject. However,
Okay.
I thought about like doing this thing, with continuing with my son, and I'm not going to do it simply because I think that would be more so a maternity book now, and that
Yeah.
wasn't the goal of the first book, because I feel like, yes, there are still maybe like taboos, family dynamic that we could talk about and how to navigate it, but it would be more so how to raise a toddler.
Yes.
And then it would become a parenting book. And I don't think I'm equipped to give like parenting lesson, because this is just my experience.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm probably not going to keep writing about motherhood. I might do little stories and all of it, or if I find something that I'm like, okay, this is something really taboo, something we really need to speak about, I
Yeah.
might do a story on that. But
Okay.
probably not going to keep following. And at one point, I don't think my son would like it. If I keep publishing a book about 2 years old, 5 years old, and then teenager, he's probably like,
Definitely not.
Mom, can you stop? Like I'm 20 now. I have
Yeah.
my life. Can you stop writing about me? Like, yeah, I
So
think he
true.
would be kind of mad about me. Yeah. But no, my goal though is to keep going with my healing journey right now. And so I said my goal was to keep being authentic, vulnerable, and open
Mhm.
up. So it got me thinking, what would be another story that I would need to tell? Because I'm still going to keep writing nonfiction. So that book that I'm going to be releasing December 1st is another memoir. So it's another nonfictional story. It will be about a time in my life that, I thought everything was normal. I
Mm,
thought at the time everything was fine. Okay. I spent years gaslighting myself into thinking it was just a normal childhood, a normal experience. But then now I know it was not. So that's why I'm writing this book about it. Do you want to know
wow.
the title?
Yes, for
The,
sure, please.
the title says it all, I feel like.
Okay.
So the title of my next book will be Bowing to Predators, a memoir on abuse hidden in tradition.
Wow.
So it will be about the time when I was between 13 to 18 that I was doing karate in a martial dojo. And there was a lot of instructors that were just abusing their power and authority. And there was physical, emotional violence and grooming into this
Wow.
environment. And, the environment in itself was problematic because those behaviors were seen, were accepted. And so
Mhm.
in my head, as a 13-year-old girl, was this is acceptable. This is normal because all of the adults around me are accepting it. So it must be okay. So
Mm,
there was a lot of violence, a lot of abuse, a lot of power, people in power that shouldn't have it,
yeah.
and I went through years with that. And then I started talking about it to other coaches of other martial arts discipline and all of that. And funny, well, not necessarily funny, but one of the conversation I've had with one of them, another instructor used to tell me we weren't allowed, to touch the feet of the kids, to place them, to help them kick. And it just really struck me because I was like, do you know how many feet I've touched? Like me
Wow.
touching a foot is like really the baseline of like inappropriate things. And we got talking and he was like, no, this is so inappropriate. It shouldn't have happened. But so many of those things were just inappropriate. But in the
Mm,
same way that I'm writing this, that I wrote this book about motherhood, that I'm writing this book, I don't want it to be necessarily centered on the abuse. I want it to be centered on the healing journey.
yeah.
So I wrote a lot of personal letters to myself throughout this
Mhm.
writing. So it wouldn't be just a harsh book. So you can have as well how I felt throughout it, how I'm navigating it now, and how I'm healing from it now. So my
Okay.
goal is for another woman who might have had a similar experience, she could go through the book and go through her own healing journey. Yes, her experience might be different, but
Yeah.
she's still going to be able to feel through it. And I hope it's just going to help her advance through that. And also just to bring awareness, because I'm sure I'm going to surprise a lot of people with this book. There
It
are a lot
sounds
of,
very
yeah.
surprising.
And, the first people that were very surprised are my parents. And,
Whoa.
my dad was doing karate as well. So he was present in that environment. So a lot of people that were close didn't seem to see some of the abuse or thought it was just normal. So I
Mm,
want to bring awareness to a problem, because the problem with grooming or the problem with physical violence or emotional violence in a martial art dojo is that you expect a certain level of physicality. You're going to get punched, you're going to get kicked, like, yeah, you expect that. But
mm,
there's always a level of when it becomes inappropriate, when it
mhm.
becomes abusive, when it becomes like, no, you're just taking your authority, you're taking your power over us to be abusive. So it's that step that I want to
Yes.
bring really awareness to it, because I'm sure, unfortunately, there are many other women that have gone through something similar. And there are so many girls in sports that
Yeah.
have trouble with instructor, with coaches, and all that. So that will be my next book. It's still going to be a pretty big taboo, breaking silence, I guess, book. But I think it's my way to be vulnerable, to be completely open, and again, to just create that safe space. Because once again, I know, unfortunately, this is an experience other women will have had.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's this wonderful comment by Vent Alexandria who's been asking questions. Thank you for being transparent and sharing your experience. You are truly an encouragement to others. So
Oh,
that really
thank
sums up
you.
how I feel as well. That I'm so grateful you came on the show tonight. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. And yes, we want everyone to read more. So, do you have your first time mom confessions with you on hand?
I
Awesome.
do.
Hold it up. Okay. So, everyone, go get your copy of Uncensored First Time Mom Confessions. And then your second book, which is going to be out December 1st. So,
Yes,
stay tuned for that. And when I re upload this, I'm going to put up, all your details. So, where they can get the book on Amazon and, just where they can follow you and keep tabs on your journey with the new book. So, thank you so much, Sandrine, for being here.
of
Really
course.
wonderful to have had you.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for the question. And I'm always there, to talk about my experience and to share it with others. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. You did an amazing job and you shared so much. And I'm sure whoever, listens to this now or later is going to glean so much treasure from it. So thank you.
I hope so. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.